Hey, Sleep Sheepy here. Today I wanted to make a video that's a little bit different and just kind of take a deep dive into why I invade in Elden Ring, why I like this game so much, and why I think that it's something that everybody should try at some point if they are interested in just Souls games in general. So the first thing I want to talk about is just like the base core reason why I like invading, and that's because I think it's fun and gratifying. Those two things are kind of the most important aspects of why I do it. I think invading is extremely fun for lots of reasons, and I think it's also extremely gratifying. So the fun aspect, I think, is mostly centered around just the variety of gameplay that you'll experience through every invasion. Everyone is unique. Every single one, requires different skill sets and depth of knowledge, and you can get into invasions that, you really take away something and learn something about the mechanics of the game. And, ones where you lose, I think are going to be extremely useful in terms of taking a second and just thinking about, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Was there even, an option to do something better? But maybe there isn't. But I think that's part of just why it's so much fun, is because it requires you to think about just how you played and what went wrong. And then on the flip side of that, if you win the invasion, then it's really gratifying. And I think part of that is because it's intentionally unbalanced. You can invade people that are lower than you in terms of level, but most likely you won't. Most likely, especially in Elden Ring, it's going to be an invasion where you're outnumbered and you're kind of using your skill and the setup that you've decided on to try to outplay your opponents. And I think that's a really rewarding aspect of it, as well as, you're putting yourself on the back foot intentionally. And I was somebody who would, play Call of Duty way back in the day and just go into a free-for-all lobby that was, just totally random people and try to quickscope everybody. And frequently I'd lose because, it wasn't the most effective way to play that game, but it was extremely fun. And, in the moments that you would win or, do better than you had done previously, I think it was extremely rewarding. And I think that's where Elden Ring really shines, is you're putting yourself up against the odds of just normal video game play. It's not supposed to be balanced. It's supposed to be, a challenge, and you can kind of set your own rules for how you want to play. I think most people, especially if they're not going for like super high level PvP duels, will set their own set of rules and expectations for themselves and just try to play by those rules, even though other people aren't going to adhere to them, and there's no expectation that other people would adhere to them. So I just think that's one of the many reasons that this game is so much fun and has so much depth, is you can really set your own challenges for yourself within the context of playing this game. And I think the failure in this game is extremely motivating, and that's kind of the whole ethos around this game, is that you learn by your failure and get better and just see yourself, further understanding the depths of a game like this. So I think anybody that started at the Soul series and, went to Undead Burg and just got wrecked over and over again until you finally understood how to play Dark Souls in terms of PvE, I think anyone that's gone through that experience or a similar experience within, maybe Dark Souls 1 wasn't your first game, then I think you just kind of know that failure that you experience at the beginning comes back and really rewards you later. And I think PvP is like that too. I played Dark Souls 1 and 2 completely offline, and then Dark Souls 3 I started playing online. And when I, having gone through the first two games completely offline, I was like, oh, I think I'm pretty good at this game. And then Dark Souls 3, somebody invaded me for the very first time, and I just got completely wrecked. And it's like, okay, I may be okay at PvE, but there's a whole facet to this game that I'm really, really bad at. And so that experience was so motivating for me to just, I don't know, it's humbling too, because it was just like, I think that I know something about this game. I think that I'm okay at it. And it turns out that no, in fact, I'm actually pretty bad at this whole other half of the game. And I think that was really eye-opening, and just from that point on I kind of got addicted to PvP, where PvE felt almost secondary to the challenge that comes with PvP, because you are on the back foot from the beginning, and you kind of learn and grow. I think the first stages of PvP for me were just using one weapon that I thought was good and seeing if I could win occasionally. And as you kind of develop these skills and start integrating more technical things like swapping or weapon variety, or just like learning about how to completely optimize your build for certain scenarios and then make sure you are covered in all the different scenarios, like there's so much learning that can go into it, which really just makes it so much fun. And another reason that I PvP is because I can't really play any other video games anymore. After I got introduced to the Souls series, it really made other video games feel bad by comparison, or just not what I was looking for. So I felt like, for me back in the day, like Skyrim was one game that I really enjoyed. Call of Duty, like Modern Warfare 2, back when I think there was only one Modern Warfare 2, and like Halo 3. And all those games, I feel like the best elements of all those games are present in Elden Ring, or just the Souls PvP in general, where you have the depth and the story building and just the sheer content associated with a game like Skyrim, but you have the strategy and reaction time and mechanical just depth that you'd get from a game like Halo 3 or Call of Duty, or just something that's a little bit more interesting. I guess Halo 3 is probably a better example of strategy than Call of Duty, but that's a little bit off topic. But I just can't play any other games anymore because I find this to be so much fun every single time. It's just different, and the repetitive nature of first-person shooters, I think, is a detriment to the longevity of that game. But for me, I can put so many hours into a game like this because, if something starts getting stale, I'll just change my build. I'll try to make something work that I haven't tried before, and it doesn't need to work 100% of the time. There's no leaderboard for it. It's just you having fun in a game that's interesting and unique, and just, I don't know, I think that is a huge part of it. So another thing that I think is important is just like, I think everybody who really cares about this game should give PvP a try. If you're the type of person that has the time for it, obviously, to be good at PvP, it requires a really large time commitment. But if you're somebody that loves these games and puts a ton of time into it, I think PvP is right up your alley in terms of what Dark Souls is at its core, Elden Ring is at its core, which is a really challenging game that's really rewarding. And I think PvP brings that same kind of experience, but to, if boss fights ever feel repetitive, you don't have to deal with that repetitive nature of it. It's super different every single time. And that's another aspect that I think is important in comparing invasions versus duels. Duels are a great way to learn and get better at this game, and I think especially high-level duels will make sure you are kind of at your peak in terms of just reaction timing, not panic rolling, practicing tech that's important, understanding the different elements of different builds that can be super effective in PvP. But you're not going to get some of the silliness that you get from invasions that I think are so fun. Like, you're not going to have elevator shenanigans like you do in PvP, where you might go for a jumping attack and totally mistime it with the rate of drop of the associated elevator, just for a totally random example. And like, that's funny, that's fun. I don't know, I think invasions are just this perfect mix of competitive play where you really are trying to win, and they can be frustrating because you're playing something competitive, but you're also doing something uncompetitive in terms of just like having fun and experimenting and trying out builds. So I just think that there's so many facets of this game that make it really interesting and unique, and it's just ruined other video games for me in that sense. But I do think if you like, the core mechanics of Elden Ring or Dark Souls, and you've only ever played offline, and you're willing to kind of start back from square one in a just kind of humbling way where everything you've learned is applicable to some extent, but not going to make you, amazing at the game, then I think it's worth trying, and just knowing that you're going to be bad at it for a period of time, but you will get better in the same way that you started out at these games bad, like everybody does, and got better over time. And the last part of this that I wanted to mention is just reasons why I don't invade. So I'm not invading to try to make people feel bad. I'm not invading to ruin people's gameplay. I think it's a part of this series intentionally. It's meant to kind of balance the game to some extent in terms of co-opers, and especially now, you used to get the advantage of being embered in Dark Souls 3, and that was kind of to make up for it, you would get invaded. But now in Elden Ring, you have to be co-oping, and I think that's fair. I want to come into a world and be outnumbered. I want the challenge of that type of fight, and that's I think it is fair to some extent. There's going to be opposite ends of the spectrum where you invade somebody that has no idea what they're doing, really just they're struggling with PvE. So when they experience, a PvPer, it's just way too much, and that's totally fine. In moments like that, I might just sever out. I might drop them something if it's clear that they're not really interested in fighting and not really optimized for it. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have the potential to be invading a group of 3 people who really know what they're doing and are set up specifically to kill you. And I think that's fair too. You go into this scenario knowing that you can really get a completely mixed bag of what's good and what's bad and what's balanced and what's not balanced, and you can decide how balanced you want to be with your build, how balanced you don't want to be with your build, and it's really up to you. And I think that's fun. It's just unique. So this has been kind of a long rant about something that I've meant to kind of just touch on in general, because I haven't really talked too in depth about what this entire channel is about. And that's really just the core of it, is that I think it's fun to learn. I think it's fun to play this game. I think it's all extremely interesting, and there's just so much depth. And so I want to explore both the depth of the game and the depth of just skill mechanics associated with PvP. So if you look at my earlier videos, there's definitely a drop in terms of technical skill versus my videos now, just because I've been practicing, I've been learning, I've been making videos and trying things. And it's, especially too at the beginning of Elden Ring, not everybody knew what they were doing. There's the element of you can take some information from Dark Souls to this game and have a good idea, but there was a period of time when nobody knew that Rivers of Blood was good. And it's kind of gone back and forth in terms of how good it's been, but that knowledge didn't always exist. And I just think that it's really just a fun way to explore this game and these types of mechanics for what has just become my favorite type of video game in general. So yes, this was just kind of a long rant about why I care about this game and why I'm got videos on this channel, and just kind of the general goals and why I think everyone should try invading and why I do it. So yeah, that's all I've got to say, and I hope you have a good one.